Worked in a morgue. One night the power went out, and something moved between the tables. I never thought the morgue would change me. Most people imagine it as a cold, silent place. A storage room where nothing happens, where the dead simply wait for paperwork and burial. But the truth is, the silence is what gets you. Not the bodies, not the smell, the silence. Because sometimes, that silence feels like it's listening. I had been working there for 7 months when that night happened. The county morgue wasn't big, just 2 examination rooms, a refrigerated chamber with 16 compartments, a tiny office, and a break room that smelled permanently of microwave noodles. It sat behind the hospital, connected to the emergency wing by a long corridor no one liked walking through at night. The corridor always felt colder than the rest of the building. Nurses said it was just bad insulation. I wasn't so sure. My shift always started at 8 p.m. Nights were slow. Too slow. Most of the time, all I did was sign forms, prepare bodies for the morning pathologist, and clean tools. The monotonous routine made hours stretch endlessly. You start noticing small sounds, air vents, metal clicking as it cools, the distant hum of the generator. You learn to distinguish harmless noises from the ones that don't belong. That night began like any other. Rain, wind, the usual flickering ceiling light we kept meaning to replace. I had 3 bodies to process. An elderly woman who passed in her sleep, a young guy from a motorcycle accident, and a John Doe found near the river. Nothing unusual. Nothing disquieting. At 1:17 a.m. I was standing in examination room 2, finishing paperwork. I remember the exact time because the clock on the wall made this annoying double-click sound, like it was struggling to move its second hand. Then the lights flickered. Not unusual in bad weather. But then they flickered again. And again. And then everything went black. Total darkness. The hum of the fluorescent lights disappeared. The background vibration of the ventilation system stopped. Even the generator, a dull, constant companion, fell silent. It was the kind of silence that hits you in the chest. For a moment, I stood still, waiting for the emergency lights to kick in. They always did within 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, nothing. Great! I muttered into the darkness. My voice sounded too loud. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and the beam landed on the nearest steel examination table. The sheet over the body looked unnaturally still, too still, even for a corpse. I shook the thought away. Stress does things. I walked toward the breaker panel in the hallway, lifting my phone to get more light. The rain outside hammered the windows like gravel. Then I heard it. A sound behind me. Soft. Slow. A gentle dragging noise. I froze mid-step. Came again. Sachff, like fabric brushing against metal. I felt cold crawl from my stomach to my throat. The sound was coming from inside examination room 2. From between the tables. I turned around slowly, raising my phone. The weak beam of light passed over the first table. Nothing. The second table. Nothing. I took a step forward. Sachff, this time closer. I aimed the light at the floor. The sheet on the table nearest the wall was slightly displaced. Just an inch, but I knew for certain it hadn't been like that before the blackout. I prepared those sheets myself. I smoothed them out. I noticed wrinkles. I whispered to myself, maybe the draft moved it. But there was no draft. No ventilation. And even during power outages, air pressure didn't shift like that. I felt my heartbeat in my palms. Before I could think of what to do, another sound broke the silence. A faint, almost fragile tapping.
Top, top, top?
From somewhere deeper in the dark room. Slow. Rhythmic. Too deliberate to be random. I lifted my phone higher, scanning the room. Shadows bent strangely across the steel surfaces. Every reflection looked like a silhouette. Then something moved. Not much, just a slight shift of shadow near the far table. But it wasn't my shadow. And nothing in that room should have moved. I whispered, "Who's there?" And that was when I heard it. A quiet breath. A human breath. But too low to be inhaling. More like something exhaling from the bottom of its lungs. Right behind the third table. I feel my chest tighten even remembering it. The darkness that breathed back. I told myself not to panic. Hospitals lose power. Backup generators fail sometimes. The building was old, the wiring older. But no amount of logic could explain the breathing. Not there. Not in that room. Not with 3 bodies that couldn't possibly breathe. I held the phone tighter and forced myself to speak louder. Hello? If someone came in, you need to answer me. My voice trembled. I hated that. The tapping continued.
Top, top, top?
It echoed softly against the tile, like something lightly tapping metal with a fingernail. I stepped toward the sound. The phone beam hit the edge of the 3rd table, and for a second, something glimmered underneath like movement. Or moisture. I leaned forward. The sheet on that table wasn't just shifted. It was slightly lifted, as if something from underneath had pushed it up. I stopped breathing. That body, John Doe. The one found by the river, I had zipped him into his bag myself. My hand shook as I reached forward and gripped the edge of the sheet. Slowly, I lifted it. The stainless steel beneath reflected the phone light. Empty. The table was empty. My stomach dropped. I looked around wildly. There was no way someone removed that body without me hearing it. The refrigeration chamber was on the opposite end of the room. The door hadn't opened. I would have heard it. And even if someone somehow did move the body, where the hell did they take it? Then the tapping stopped. And the breathing stopped. But silence, real silence, would have been easier to handle. Instead, something new replaced it. A soft thud. From the refrigerated chamber.
No.
No. Not that. The refrigerated chamber doors were heavy, insulated, and each compartment slid open with a metallic groan you could hear from the hallway. Bodies didn't move inside them. They couldn't. I swallowed hard and took a step backward, toward the hallway. Another thud. Louder. From inside compartment number 7. John Doe had been in number 7 earlier that night. The light of my phone flickered across the chamber door as I got closer. I didn't want to go closer, but my feet moved on their own. Thud. Right behind the steel door. I nearly dropped the phone.
No.
No way. I whispered it like a mantra. Because the alternative wasn't possible. Something scraped inside the compartment, like fingers dragging along metal from the inside. My pulse hammered in my ears. The latch on the chamber door shook once. Then again. Then slowly it clicked. I stumbled back. The handle moved downward with the smallest creak, as if pushed from the inside. No, don't, I whispered without thinking. The door swung open. Cold air poured out like fog. My phone flickered again, and for a split second, I saw something inside. Not a person. Not clearly. Just a shape, curled on the tray, hunched forward in a way no human body could be if it were dead. I blinked, stunned, and in that moment, the lights returned. Not all at once. Just a weak emergency light above the door flickering to life. Enough to see that the compartment was empty again. Empty. The tray was pulled halfway out, but the body wasn't there. I backed into the wall. My legs didn't work right. My knees felt like rubber. What is happening? My voice cracked. Then, from behind me, on the far side of the examination room, I heard footsteps. Slow, unsteady, dragging. The kind of footsteps you'd expect from someone who hadn't walked in a very, very long time. I spun around, lifting the phone, and the emergency light flickered directly above table 3, the table where John Doe had been. And for a moment, one single second, I saw something standing behind it. A human silhouette, barely visible in the dim light, unmoving, facing my direction. Tall, rigid, head tilted slightly as if curious, or listening. Then the light flickered again, and the silhouette was gone. I staggered backward so fast I nearly slipped.
No.
The sound of something soft brushing across the tile floor came from the opposite corner, like bare feet moving without rhythm. Then, a whisper. Low, hoarse, more breath than voice. So close I felt it more than heard it. Leave. My blood turned to ice. I stood there for a few seconds, listening, trying to convince myself that it was just the old building breathing after losing power. But inside, somewhere in the darkness, something had changed. It felt like the morgue suddenly grew deeper, heavier, and I wasn't alone in it anymore. I forced the trembling out of my hands, pulled out my phone, and turned on the flashlight. The beam was weak, dim, the kind that only makes the darkness thicker instead of breaking it. I took a step forward. The air grew colder. Physically colder, like I had just walked into a room where the AC had been running all day. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. And again, tararr, this time closer. I aimed the light between the tables. White sheets lay still as death, frozen like frames from an old film. No movement.
No shadows shifting.
Who's there? I said before I could stop myself, and immediately regretted opening my mouth. Something soft fell in the distance. A tiny, metallic clink, like a small object slipping from someone's hand. But in a morgue, there isn't anything that should fall on its own. I moved deeper, the flashlight cutting narrow paths through the dark, and each step echoed like someone else was walking beside me. My legs felt heavy, my breath short. I rounded one of the tables and stopped, because something metallic caught the light on the floor. A small gleam, a button, from a standard medical coat. A simple metal snap, the type that tears off easily when someone pulls too hard, or when something drags you. I touched it. Cold. Very cold. And then, right next to me, maybe a meter, maybe two, I heard a sound that is impossible to misinterpret. A slow, careful inhale, and then an exhale. Low, damp. I whipped the light toward the sound, but it hit only a bare wall. No one there, but the sound had been real. I heard it. Someone was breathing.
No, no, y whisperat.
No one could move. No one. But the breathing came again. This time from my right. I stepped back and bumped into something with my calf. Something soft, yet heavy. A table. And it wasn't where I'd left it. My heart punched my ribs so hard I lost balance for a second. I grabbed the metal railing, and at that exact moment, something under the sheet covering the table moved, ever so slightly. Just a tiny twitch, like fingers shifting underneath. The light almost slipped from my hands. I held the phone with both palms, aimed the light. The sheet was lying flat, perfectly still, as if nothing had happened. It's stress, I whispered. Power outage, nerves. But I didn't finish, because something under that same sheet dragged a fingernail across the metal surface of the table. Not a knock, not a scratch, but slow, stretching. Kayiti. I stumbled back, my heartbeat slamming like it was trying to tear out of me, and then I felt it, not heard, felt, something rising in the darkness. I didn't see it. The air changed. The volume of the room shifted. The shadow of the place became different. Someone, or something, had sat up. The sheet lifted slightly, just a few centimeters, like something underneath was trying to sit upright. I stepped back again, and in the heavy blackness, a voice spoke, raspy, dry, as if its throat hadn't felt water in years. Who is here? The phone almost slipped from my hands, the beam skittering across the ceiling, the walls, the floor, and back onto the table. The sheet was moved, a little, shifted from its prior position, and beneath it I saw the shape of shoulders, and it was breathing. The sheet began to rise. I don't remember deciding to step back. My body did it on its own. Pure instinct, old animal fear pouring through my veins like ice water. The figure under the sheet inhaled again. Slow.
Vet.
Like lungs that hadn't worked in a long time. Stay where you are. The voice rasped suddenly, not loud, but sharp, cracking like dry wood. It wasn't a request. I froze. My flashlight flickered. Not because of the battery. It flickered like something was interfering with it, like a pulse of cold air kept passing through the room. The sheet rose a little higher. A shape straightened underneath it. A spine. Shoulders. A head. Not fully sitting up. Just enough to make the silhouette unmistakable. Dead bodies don't do that. I tried to swallow, but my throat had turned into sand. This is a morgue, I whispered, for myself, for sanity. You're not supposed to. I didn't finish, because the sheet jerked. Like something underneath had snapped its head toward me. I stumbled back into another table, this time hard enough to make a tray of instruments rattle against the surface. The sound echoed through the pitch-black room, bouncing like footsteps. Who? The voice croaked again. Is moving? The flashlight flickered once more, then steadied. And that's when I realized something that froze my blood. The sheet was shifting, rising from the center, but the edges were perfectly still, as if whatever was lifting it wasn't using hands. Something underneath pushed the sheet higher, and a cold draft rolled toward me. Not air, cold, damp, the smell of soil, of graves, of something that belonged beneath the earth. I forced air into my lungs and said the first thing my mouth could shape. My name is, but the voice under the sheet interrupted me. No name, it exhaled, shuddering. Names are for the living. My legs turned weak. I gripped the nearest table for balance, and something touched my fingers. Not warm, not alive, metal cold skin. I snapped my hand back, choking on a gasp. My light caught the corner of the table, and a second sheet. This one had shifted too. Something underneath was turning, not sitting up, but rolling, like a person trying to lie on their side. I felt my chest tighten as the realization hit me. It wasn't one. It wasn't just one body. Two of them had moved. And then, from the far end of the room, something else sounded. A soft thud. Another. Then a dragging scrape, like a heel sliding across polished tile. Jesus Christ, I breathed. My light swept across the room, catching stainless steel, pale sheets, and shadows that shouldn't have been there. The shapes beneath the cloths were no longer lying like empty, quiet shells. They were shifting. A shoulder here, a knee there, a spine arching slowly, painfully, like something inside them was trying to learn how to control the body. Stop, I said stupidly. Don't move, you're dead. The voice answered from the first table. A hoarse, broken whisper. Then why did you come tonight? My heartbeat slammed so hard I felt it in my teeth. I work here, I said, my voice cracking. I just... Liar. The word slithered out like a breath behind my ear. My flashlight flickered. The sheet on the closest table dipped. Something underneath curling upward like a spine arching. You came because... The voice dragged, wavered, as if deciding what shape to take. The dark called you back. A chill poured down my back so sharply it felt like needles. What do you mean back? I whispered. The sheet rose. Not slowly this time, but sharply, like something underneath had sat up fully. My flashlight caught the fabric stretching over a face-shaped outline. Nose, brow, mouth. But the mouth was wrong. Open. Far too open. And then the voice didn't whisper this time. It groaned. Deep, guttural, full of something that didn't belong in a human throat. You were here once before. You left us in the dark. And now, you're back. I shoved myself away from the table, stumbling into another, sending a metal pan crashing to the floor. The sound echoed, and everything in the room went silent. Not a breath, not a shift, not even the hum of the outside generator. Just silence, dead silence. And then, by the entrance door, something began to stand up. The one by the door. Something rose by the entrance. Tall, unsteady, moving like bones waking from rust. At first, it looked like a shadow peeling itself off the wall. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw the truth. One of the bodies, one of the ones I had processed earlier that week, was standing upright, pushing the sheet off with a trembling motion like someone clawing their way out of a dream. I knew that body. Male. Late 60s. Heart failure. Toe tag on the left foot. I had zipped him into a bag myself. Now he stood barefoot on the cold floor, his head tilted unnaturally to the left, as if his neck hadn't fully remembered how to hold itself up. For one perfect, horrifying second, we simply stared at each other. Or rather, I stared. He didn't have the muscles, the control, the awareness to look at anything. His eyes weren't open, But he heard me. He turned toward the sound of my breaths. Shaky, loud, betraying me with every exhale. Behind me, across the room, the other sheets began to tremble again. Some bodies shifted like they were stretching stiff limbs for the first time in decades. But the man near the door, he was different. He was fully standing, swaying slightly, waiting, as if for me. "Sit down," I whispered automatically. An instinctive command, something I'd say to a confused living patient. The room inhaled. Not a human breath. Collective one. The old man took one step toward me. Barefoot. Wet sound. Heel then sole on the tile. My pulse went wild. Another step. Then, something whispered behind me. "Don't run." I spun around. Nothing but sheets slowly rising and falling like quiet breathing. But the voice was close. Too close. "I'm not running," I said, barely managing to form the words. "Liar," a second voice answered, this time from the table beside me. The sheet trembled, bulging outward as though something inside was fighting gravity. Then a hand pressed up against the sheet from beneath. Thin, long, pushing outward like someone reaching for help or for me. I staggered away from it, straight toward the man standing at the door. He was closer now, so much closer. His chin lifted slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings. His lips parted, not to breathe, to speak, but what came out wasn't his voice. It was layered, like multiple people vocalizing from inside one throat, like several broken radios turning on at once. "You left us alone." My stomach twisted. "I've never been here before," I whispered. The lights flickered again, responding to something I couldn't see. "You have," the voices groaned. "Long ago, when the darkness first learned your name." A cold wave washed over me, the same sensation as the moment you think someone is standing behind you but you're too scared to turn. "You're confusing me with someone else," I murmured. The room laughed. Not loud, not human. Behind me, across the room, the other sheets began to tremble again. Some bodies shifted like they were stretching stiff limbs for the first time in decades. But the man near the door, he was different. He was fully standing, swaying slightly, waiting, as if for me. "Sit down," I whispered automatically. An instinctive command, something I'd say to a confused living patient. The room inhaled. Not a human breath. Collective one. The old man took one step toward me. Barefoot. Wet sound. Heel then sole on the tile. My pulse went wild. Another step. Then, something whispered behind me. "Don't run." I spun around. Nothing but sheets slowly rising and falling like quiet breathing. But the voice was close. Too close. "I'm not running," I said, barely managing to form the words. "Liar," a second voice answered, this time from the table beside me. The sheet trembled, bulging outward as though something inside was fighting gravity. Then a hand pressed up against the sheet from beneath. Thin, long, pushing outward like someone reaching for help or for me. I staggered away from it, straight toward the man standing at the door. He was closer now, so much closer. His chin lifted slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings. His lips parted, not to breathe, to speak, but what came out wasn't his voice. It was layered, like multiple people vocalizing from inside one throat, like several broken radios turning on at once. "You left us alone." My stomach twisted. "I've never been here before," I whispered. The lights flickered again, responding to something I couldn't see. "You have," the voices groaned. "Long ago, when the darkness first learned your name." A cold wave washed over me, the same sensation as the moment you think someone is standing behind you but you're too scared to turn. "You're confusing me with someone else," I murmured. The room laughed. Not loud, not human. Sheets rustled, bodies shifted, metal clicked, all at once, forming a sick, broken imitation of laughter. The old man raised his head higher, and I saw the bruising around his neck. Deep purple pooled under the skin in a way I recognized too well. Postmortem lividity. That was the moment reality snapped back hard. These weren't people. Not anymore. These were bodies being used like puppets. By something that shouldn't know how to use them. Stop, I said, but not like a command.